In 1960, Elvis Presley was filming at Paramount Studios when he spotted Dean Martin outside his dressing room. Elvis got off his bicycle, walked straight up to Dean, and met his idol face to face for the first time since 1956. Dean's teenage daughter Deanna was standing there. Elvis looked her in the eye, held her hand, and said something that made her almost pass out on the spot. "They call me the king of rock and roll, but your dad is the king of cool." This is the story of Elvis Presley's obsession with Dean Martin and how the crooner nobody talks about shaped the biggest star in rock and roll history. In July of 1953, a shy 18-year-old walked into Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee. His name was Elvis Presley. He wanted to make a record for his mother's birthday. Marion Keisker was the office manager. She'd seen hundreds of wannabe singers walk through that door. But something about this kid made her pay attention. So she turned on the tape recorder without telling studio owner Sam Phillips. Elvis sang two songs, "My Happiness" and "That's When Your Heartaches Begin." Marion listened carefully, and then she noticed something strange. When Sam Phillips asked Elvis to run through some more songs, Marion couldn't help but notice how much of Elvis's set was basically Dean Martin's greatest hits. She even thought to herself, according to multiple biographies, that if Elvis was going to sound like anyone, it looked like he decided it was going to be Dean Martin. Elvis wasn't trying to invent rock and roll yet. He was trying to be a crooner, just like Dean. Dean Martin was born Dino Paul Cressetti in Steubenville, Ohio, in 1917. By the 1950s, he was the most bankable matinee idol in America. He made hugely successful pop records. He starred in movies with Jerry Lewis that made millions at the box office. He headlined the lucrative Las Vegas circuit. And most importantly for Elvis, he had serious sex appeal. Dean Martin had everything Elvis wanted: fame, money, women, respect, and that voice, that sexy, wobbly, almost hiccuping baritone that made teenage girls scream. Elvis studied Dean obsessively. He dyed his naturally light brown hair jet black to match Dean's blue-black sheen. He borrowed Dean's descending bass run followed by guitar chord ending. He copied Dean's vocal style, that smooth baritone delivery. In 1959, when Elvis was already a megastar, he released My Wish Came True. The opening four-note motif was identical to Dean Martin's Return to Me, released in April of 1958. Even the key was the same. Elvis wasn't hiding his influences. He was paying tribute. Because to Elvis, Dean Martin wasn't just a singer. He was the blueprint. In 1960, both Elvis and Dean were filming at Paramount Studios. Elvis was working on GI Blues. Dean was shooting one of his many films. Deanna Martin, Dean's daughter, was visiting her father on set. She was a teenager, and she was about to have the most surreal moment of her life. "I remember standing outside Paramount Studios," Deanna recalled years later. Elvis rode up on his bike. In those days, actors and crew members rode bicycles around the studio lot to get from one soundstage to another. Elvis saw Dean Martin standing outside his dressing room. He got off the bike immediately. He says hi to my father, Deanna remembered, and Dad introduces me. He says, "Deanna, this is Elvis Presley. And Elvis, this is my daughter Deanna." Elvis leaned down to Deanna, looked her in the eye, held her hand, and said the words that would become legendary. "Deanna, I love your dad. They call me the king of rock and roll, but your dad is the king of cool. I almost died," Deanna admitted in multiple interviews. It has to be true. Elvis Presley thinks my dad is the king of cool. But that wasn't the only time Elvis expressed his admiration for Dean Martin. According to Deanna, Elvis's obsession with her father went deeper than anyone realized. "He just adored my dad," Deanna shared in a 2021 interview. "He would drive out to the front of our house and just stare. He always felt my father was so fabulous, and he loved his voice." Elvis would literally drive to the Martin family home in Beverly Hills, park outside, and just sit there, not to meet Dean, not to talk to him, just to be near him. It wasn't stalking. It was reverence. Elvis idolized Dean Martin the way fans idolized Elvis. And even after Elvis became the biggest star on earth, that admiration never faded. One time, Dean Martin was playing golf, his favorite pastime. He was lining up a shot when suddenly someone started screaming, "Dean, Dean," and came running across the golf course. It was Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, interrupting a golf game to say hello to the king of cool. In January of 1970, Elvis was performing at the International Hotel in Las Vegas. His residency had become legendary. Fans from around the world came to see him. One night, Elvis looked out into the audience and saw someone who made him stop mid-performance. Dean Martin was sitting in the crowd. Elvis didn't just acknowledge him. He didn't just wave. He stopped the entire show and sang Dean Martin's hit song, "Everybody Loves Somebody," right there, on stage, in front of thousands of people. Elvis Presley performed a Dean Martin song as a tribute to the man sitting in the audience. It wasn't the first time Elvis would acknowledge his admiration for the famous crooner. And it wouldn't be the last. Throughout the 1970s, Elvis regularly covered songs associated with Dean Martin during his live concerts. But here's what makes this story even more powerful. By 1970, Elvis didn't need to pay tribute to anyone. He was Elvis Presley, the most famous entertainer on the planet. He could have ignored Dean Martin in the audience, and nobody would have thought twice. But Elvis didn't operate that way. Because to him, Dean Martin wasn't just another singer. He was the man who'd shown him how to be cool. Elvis Presley and Dean Martin had completely different styles. Elvis was rock and roll, blues, gospel. Dean was crooning jazz and pop. But their shared passion for music and their ability to connect with audiences made them both legends. According to music historians, Dean Martin was one of the primary influences on Elvis's singing style. Not just African-American singers like Arthur Crudup or Big Mama Thornton. Dean Martin, the Italian crooner from Ohio. Elvis reportedly modeled his performance of Love Me Tender after Dean Martin's vocal style. Both shared a love for country music, which influenced their music and performances. And here's what nobody talks about. Elvis's sex appeal, the thing that made teenage girls scream and parents clutch their pearls, that came directly from Dean Martin. Dean had been doing it for years. The effortless cool, the bedroom eyes, the voice that sounded like a lover whispering in your ear. Elvis took that template and added rebellion. He took Dean's smoothness and electrified it. He took the crooner and turned him into a rock star. But the foundation was always Dean Martin. So how did Dean Martin feel about all this? About being Elvis Presley's idol? About the king of rock and roll idolizing him? According to his daughter Dina, Dean was flattered but humble about it. He never bragged. He never made a big deal out of it. That wasn't his style. Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, 1995. He was 78 years old, respiratory failure and emphysema. Elvis had been gone for 18 years by then. But in the years after Elvis's death in 1977, music critics started reappraising Dean Martin's vocal recordings. They praised his phrasing, his connection to the lyrics, his relaxed style. The things Elvis had recognized back in 1953 when he was an 18-year-old kid trying to sound like his idol. Dean Martin appeared in 57 movies, starred in hundreds of TV episodes, and recorded 36 albums that produced 8 top 10 hits. And he did most of it looking like he wasn't even trying. That was the genius Elvis saw. The effortlessness, the cool. They call me the king of rock and roll. But your dad is the king of cool. Those words Elvis said to Deanna Martin in 1960 weren't just a compliment. They were a confession. An acknowledgement that everything Elvis had become, every move he made, every vocal choice he perfected, it all started with Dean Martin. Elvis Presley changed music history. He broke down racial barriers. He created a cultural revolution. He became the most famous person on earth. But he never forgot where he learned how to be a star. He learned it from watching Dean Martin, the crooner who made it look easy, the man who could sing a love song and make every woman in the room feel like he was singing to her. The king of cool. Elvis took that blueprint and built a kingdom, but he never stopped paying tribute to the man who showed him the way. If you want to hear more untold stories about the legends who changed music history, like and subscribe to King of Rock and Roll. Stay tuned for more content.